Part 95. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 941. Senior, the poison dragon pond is at the intersection of our mortal yang realm and the demonic sea realm. Half of the pond is in the sea and half is in the land. In order to win the favor of the avatar, Lu Ruyang began to introduce how good the place he chose was. At the same time, when he went into battle, he also took off his human skin mask. There is a tribe of demon dragons in the pool. I don't know their number. The most mysterious thing is that the power these demon dragons cultivate is also extremely weird. Moreover, they are very aggressive and hate our human race. But if the seniors go, these little poisonous dragons will definitely not dare to offend senior. He still didn't know Lu Ruyang's purpose of finding dangerous places. Not bad, the incarnation was also quite satisfied. Fortunately, he took the dragon beating whip over first, and then used it to deter these poisonous dragons, and then threw the day-glazed mirror into the depths. Then Zuyun would have gained something. Reliance is nothing more than a chaos sword. Of course, the premise is that he can survive the ravages of those void chaotic forces. But even if he survives, his vitality will be severely damaged after all. Now that he is trapped in his own fragments, it will not be easy to come out. Will he still be at my mercy? Rather than fusing Zuyun, he wanted to get the Dewu glazed mirror. This is an immortal weapon, the immortal weapon of the immortal emperor, nothing can compare with it. As for the weakened soul, he is not worried. The worst thing is, it takes time to cultivate the soul again. As for returning to the spirit world, he has no plans for the time being. Because when he was still communicating with Zuyunshan, he knew the horror of Yayuan. It's just that he doesn't know as much as Zuyun himself. The two of them walked towards the outside of the sect one after another. By coincidence, they ran into a group of nascent soul stage. The leader is none other than Lu Liangpeng. It turned out that when Lu Liangpeng parted with Zuyun, he returned to the sect master's hall and summoned all the Yuanying stage people again. They didn't care about how Lu Ruyang dealt with it. Instead, they became very interested in Zuyun's infant training pill. No matter what Lu Liangpeng said, they still believed that seeing is believing, so they planned to meet Zuyun in person. But unexpectedly, Lu Ruyang and Zuyun came together. Fellow Taoist, aren't you going to make elixirs? Why did you go out again? Lu Liangpeng quickly stepped forward and asked loudly. This is also to make the nascent soul believe that he has not lied to them. Sect Master Lu, the incarnation smiled slightly and said, the elixir still lacks a few main ingredients, so I plan to pick it myself. Incarnation already knew that Lu Liangpeng was the sect leader, and when Lu Ruyang took him into the natural formation, Incarnation found out. Still short of medicine. Lu Liangpeng frowned and said, what medicine is still missing? Fellow Taoist, you might as well tell me. Our Lu Yun sect is not short of elixirs. This is not big talk. The entire Fanyang realm is controlled by Lu Yun section. If there are good elixirs, they will naturally collect them. Really? The avatar showed a playful smile and said, I need poison dragon liquid, does your sect have it? If so, then of course there is no need to go. This definitely doesn't happen because the incarnation made it up. The reason why he mentioned poison dragon liquid was to let the people of Lu Yunzong know that he had gone to Poison Dragon Pond, so that no one would doubt his identity. He can also refine the infant training pill. The only thing missing is the sky fire and the furnace cauldron. But that's not a problem. He can replace the sky fire with the essence fire belt in the fire spirit orb. The reason why spiritual fire is used for elixir is that it requires the spirituality in spiritual fire. The fire spirit bead is a treasure of the fire system, and due to the 5 elements incarnation technique, it was refined into an incarnation and finally integrated with other spirit bead incarnations, so it can naturally possess spiritual intelligence. Furnace cauldron, I believe Lu Yun sect also has such an external thing. Poison dragon liquid? What kind of elixir is this? A group of nascent souls were whispering. They were already a little skeptical about the training pill, but after hearing what the avatar said, they naturally became more suspicious. Now is the critical time for the opening of the spiritual world channel. Any disturbance will make them nervous. Sect Master, Elders, at this time, Lu Ruyang was afraid that the avatar would spill the beans, so he stood up and said, I am planning to take this fellow Taoist to the Poison Dragon Pond to get the Poison Dragon liquid. Poison Dragon Pond. Hearing these 3 words, all the nascent souls changed their expressions. This is the forbidden area of the Fanyang realm, and even the entire Bifan realm. It's not a narrow escape from death, but 10 deaths and no life. Any monk who has been there will never see him come back again. One can imagine how dangerous Poison Dragon Pond is. Fellow Taoist, are you kidding me? How can a panacea like Pei Ying Dan contain venom? Lu Liangpeng also said in shock. Sect leader Lu doesn't know that pills are also 3-point poisonous. And presumably, sect leader Lu and all the elders must have heard of the words fighting poison with poison. I'm going to use the venom of this poisonous dragon to kill as many people as possible. Reduce the erysipelas and thereby improve the medicinal properties of the baby peking pill. You must know that the baby peking pill mainly acts on the yuanying. If there are too many toxins accumulated in the yuanying, it is conceivable that you will want to achieve more on the immortal path in the future. I'm afraid it will be even more difficult to break through. The avatar kept paying attention, and when he heard Lu Liangpeng mention the infant training pill, he knew that Zhu Yun had spent a lot of money in order to sneak into Lu Yun's sect and find him. That's right, how could there be pills that appear in the immortal mansion in this mortal realm? Zhu Yun had never studied Pei Ying Dan carefully, so if he wanted to convince Lu Liangpeng, he would have to follow the script and introduce it through the content recorded on the pill recipe. He can do these too. Sure enough, after hearing what the incarnation said, Lu Liangpeng no longer had any doubts in his heart. After thinking about it for a moment, he took out a flying boat from his sleeve. The flying boat was very small, but after it was released, it immediately became larger, just enough for 2 people to ride. The Poison Dragon Pond is far away. Lu can temporarily borrow this Lu Yunzhou to help fellow Taoist leave early and return early. Elder Yang, since fellow Taoist is traveling with you, you must lead the way well and don't make any mistakes. Lu Yunzhou is like a willow leaf, and his incarnation also knows how to refine weapons. He can't help but secretly praise Lu Yunzhou's refining skills well, so naturally his speed will not be slow. Then thank you first, Sect Master Lu. Without any politeness, he jumped onto Lu Yunzhou. Upon seeing this, Lu Ruyang quickly followed. It's just that he couldn't jump up, so he could only rely on the strength of his body to climb up. Sect Master, then I will take the first step. Facing Lu Liangpeng and the elders, Lu Ruyang was secretly proud. You used to ignore me, but I jumped on the boat of my predecessors, and you will not be able to climb up in the future. Seeing their formation and the fact that the old god was always present in the avatar, he had concluded that the avatar would also be able to refine the infant training pill. The first person to get the moon near the water is the elixir. I must take it first. Because of this thought, Lu Ruyang felt extremely proud. The willow leaves were like slender shuttles, soaring straight into the sky. When he disappeared, Lu Liangpeng said to everyone, there is absolutely no chance that the sect master saw it wrong. Just imagine, who in the world dares to break into the Poison Dragon Pond? Everyone was silent. Lu Liangpeng added, he is in the nascent soul stage, can you feel it? He is an alchemy master. When he refines the elixir, you will believe it. As for me saying that he is an formation master, it is a pity that he was not able to do so this time. Seeing that he can walk through the natural formation alone, he still felt a little regretful. If everything is confirmed, then the prestige in the eyes of these elders will naturally be improved a lot, and when the spiritual world channel is opened, there will be less trouble. Even in the long run, if Lu Ruyan stayed in the sect, there wouldn't be so much trouble. However, he hopes Lu Ruyan can go to the spirit world. She has sat in this position of elder for so long that her longevity is almost gone. In the air, Lu Ruyang was extremely excited. He had no spiritual power and could not drive Lu Yunzhou, so his avatar was always in control. He only needed to guide the direction. Thinking of those in the nascent soul stage who no longer dared to judge him, and even Lu Liangpeng was polite, Lu Ruyang felt that he had finally made the right decision. So, he had a bold idea. "Senior, I am willing to help Senior, I wonder if Senior can give me a good fortune." Lu Ruyang said a little nervously and worriedly. "Creation? What creation do you want?" The avatar said with a half smile. "What good fortune is given to you by the seniors, so will the young ones." Lu Ruyang said quickly. "Okay, but you have to wait until I get to the poison dragon pond. If you do things well, I can naturally give you a good fortune." The avatar smiles even more. "I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills." Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 942. Lu Yunzong, before the natural formation. Everyone frowned. Because they discovered that the rock was no longer a solid object, but a shadow. In other words, anyone can easily enter it without having to use the formation techniques. Lu Liangpeng said, "From what I can see, it is this alchemist who unlocked this natural formation." "This is impossible," one of them immediately objected, saying, "The natural formation is set by heaven. He is only at the nascent soul stage, how can he be able to break through heaven?" Yes, this man's words aroused the agreement of another person, saying, "He has no reason to break the formation. This natural formation is our Lu Yun sect's formation. Since he wants to make elixirs for our Lu Yun sect, why should he use it to make elixirs for us? If this formation is broken, will it only increase misunderstandings? Yes, sect master, even if you are showing off your formation skills, there is no need to let this formation disappear. There are different opinions, but no one knows that the formation I of this natural formation is the fragment, and when the fragment is taken away by the incarnation, naturally, the formation no longer exists. Forget it, let's go in and take a look." Lu Liangpeng thought that since the alchemist was gone, he might find something else when he went in. It was useless for them to make random guesses here. This statement was finally approved by everyone, and a group of people passed through the shadow one after another, and then were stopped by the 9 turns and 9 suns formation. "When did there be an additional formation?" Lu Liangpeng said in shock again. Although he had not been here for a long time, he knew that there was nothing in this place except the altar in the middle. Could it be that the alchemist planted it? He left something here and was afraid of being discovered by us. The 9 turn 9 yang formation can continue to operate as long as there are spirit stones. With their strength, they can naturally break through, but after all, they are suspicious of the alchemist's identity, so they naturally dare not act rashly. It should be, Lu Liangpeng pondered for a moment and said, "Originally, he told me that people in our sect should not disturb his alchemy refining. Maybe he knew that this natural formation could not trap us, so he simply set up another he made a formation. Then, he needed the poison dragon liquid, so he took Lu Ruyang away." Another person said, "It's true. Lu Ruyang was deprived of his position as elder by the sect leader at first, and he must have been unwilling. But when he came back, he was afraid of being embarrassed by meeting us, so he hid here. It was just a coincidence that he met the alchemist. Maybe, this allowed the alchemist to untie the natural formation and set up his own formation." A group of people were waiting, and you and I explained the accident that happened here as a reasonable thing, and finally they left here with great conviction. Now that there is a formation, they naturally do not need to guard it, and the identity of the alchemist is confirmed. They only need to go back and wait for the baby training pill. For a time, these elders all planned to concentrate on practicing so that they could take the baby training pill in the best condition, so they had no intention of starting another dispute. In the fragment Immortal Mansion, Zuyun gasped for air. He couldn't remember which wave of chaos force this was. After the four-sided windows were opened, they seemed to be connected with the void, and the power of chaos poured in continuously. He didn't know why this happened, and he didn't have time to find out. But fortunately, these chaotic forces are like clouds in the sky. Sometimes they are in pieces, sometimes they are separated, which also gives Zuyun a chance to breathe. It's too difficult. If the power of chaos continues, I'm afraid I will die directly. Zuyun murmured to himself and cheered up. If it weren't for the fact that there was no more chaos force pouring into the window at this moment, he wouldn't be able to relax. When the chaotic power is numerous and strong, he needs to condense the chaotic power in his body to offset it. When he is weak, Zuyun will take the opportunity to refine these chaotic powers to replenish the chaos power he has consumed. However, he was not without gains. This is equivalent to repeated chi refining, which made Zuyun's lotus grow a lot. The 25 lotus hearts also began to shine brightly during the chi refining, making them particularly beautiful. At the same time, Zuyun also discovered some characteristics of the chaos force. For example, when your own chaos power and the chaos power of the void cancel each other out, a mysterious force will be generated that will fly into the void towards the nearest window and then disappear. He tried to use his soul to follow this mysterious force, but he couldn't follow it very far. But vaguely, he felt that the chaotic force in the void should not be generated out of thin air. Perhaps, it is this mysterious power that evolved. But Zuyun didn't have the chance to think all the time, so this was just a guess. But no matter how he guessed, he couldn't solve his dilemma at this time. Unless there is no more chaos power within a certain range, then he can check the bedroom and find a way out. But the actual situation is that he didn't even look out the window. It would be great if I could see the location of my immortal mansion. Zuyun remembered that when he was in the immortal mansion, he had seen another space in the fragment of the immortal mansion, which looked like a martial arts field, and he could even see monks practicing in it. And he even remembered that when his fragments of the universe were fused, they slowly swam out of the void, and finally connected the small courtyard with the immortal mansion. This piece should be a fragment of the great universe glass mirror, not the great universe world. After Zuyun realized that there was still no void chaos force around him, he slowly stood up and walked towards the window, thinking secretly in his heart. Now he knows very little about the universe. Apart from knowing that the universe represents space, he knows nothing. The news that Xianxia told him at that time was very important, but not detailed enough. Xianxia even believed that the fragments of the universe could not fall into the mortal world. In his words, the mortal world could not bear the weight of the universe. Zuyun walked through the four windows one by one, and after making sure that the surrounding chaotic forces were all offset by him, he looked at the situation in the bedroom. To the south, there is a double row of wooden doors, which are exquisitely carved and made of extraordinary materials. But Zuyun did not dare to go over and open the door. After opening it, there must be emptiness. Zuyun was afraid that he would fall into the void and turn into chaos. To the north, there is a set of tea seats, but there is nothing on the tea table. There are only 2 chairs, and the materials are also extraordinary. I think they are made of the best wood in the fairy world. Zuyun could not recognize it. On the east side, there is a bed, next to the wall, with the head facing north and the foot facing south. This bed, only the wood parts are left, and there is no quilt or bed curtain. It's really strange, there is no furnace in the alchemy room, no tools in the refining room, and there is not even a quilt in this bedroom. Could it be that the immortal emperor knew that the immortal mirror was going to be destroyed, So he moved the things away first. Zuyun spoke to himself, but he couldn't help laughing. This idea was too interesting. The Dao glass mirror was on his chest like a heart mirror. I think the immortal emperor was the same. The heart mirror was smashed, how could he be alive to clean up his things? Shaking his head with a smile, Zuyun finally looked to the west. In the general layout of the bedroom, there will be a screen on the west side. As for whether there is a desk or a bathtub behind the screen, it depends on whether the owner of the bedroom is a man or a woman. However, this bedroom does not have a screen, but there is a desk. The desk is large and the chair is not bad. Unfortunately, there was still no corresponding object. Will it be taken away by the incarnation? Zuyun couldn't help thinking of this again, but his feet walked over uncontrollably. After approaching the chair, he sat down immediately, and his hands subconsciously supported on the desk. If there were a pen, ink, paper, and inkstone, he might write a calligraphy here. Just as he was about to get up, a beautiful figure suddenly flashed in the corner of his eye. Zuyun was startled and looked forward. He saw a woman wearing a light veil, revealing only her eyes, holding a pot of fragrant tea in her hands, walking towards him. "Who are you?" Zuyun was shocked. In this bedroom, he had been fighting against the power of the void chaos and had never seen anyone. Where did this woman come from? And her clothes were completely different from those of women in the mortal world and the spiritual world. It was more appropriate to say that she was wearing a fairy dress instead of a colorful dress. "Your Majesty, don't you remember Xianxia?" Hearing Zuyun's voice, the woman who called herself Xiaojiao suddenly knelt down with tears in her eyes. This scene stunned Zuyun. To be precise, he was stunned. "She actually called me. Your Majesty. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 943. I am not your Majesty, your Majesty is dead. Zuyun suddenly came back to his senses and said immediately. He knew that the name Your Majesty must be the immortal emperor. Perhaps, this woman is just a shadow, a remnant soul. It's also possible. It's an illusion. Breaking the void spiritual eyes technique. Zuyun shouted in his heart, and his eyes suddenly flashed with light, but there was no news about the woman. Not an illusion? Is that a remnant soul? But the remnant souls in the immortal mansion are not the only remnant souls of the immortal weapon. Moreover, it was taken back by the Chi immortal. What's going on? Just as he was stunned, the woman raised her head. With tears in my eyes, I felt pity for him. Your Majesty, you have the familiar aura of Xiaojiao. How can you say that you are dead? You clearly don't recognize Xiaojiao anymore and you despise Xiaojiao. As he said this, the woman actually cried. The tears shed from his eyes fell on the bluestone floor, and there were bright red blood flowers. Zuyun felt an inexplicable feeling of horror in his heart. If it was a phantom, why did it shed real tears? If it were a real person, why would the tears turn into blood after they fell to the ground? But the Posu Ling Eye technique cannot be seen through. He took a deep breath and said, what's the use of smelling it? Open your eyes and see, I'm not your Majesty at all. Speaking of eyes, Zuyun suddenly felt that these eyes seemed familiar, but he was so nervous that he had no time to think about them. His Majesty. Xiaojiao shouted heartbreakingly, don't pretend to be stupid, okay? You said Xiaojiao's eyes were magical, so you used a magic knife to destroy Xiaojiao's eyes. After saying that, she suddenly raised her head and stared at Zuyun closely. Zuyun was stunned. Because Xiaojiao moved fiercely, she raised her veil, revealing a familiar face. Wia. He uttered two words in disbelief. Xiaojiao looks exactly like Meng Wei. However, the temperament is completely different. At this time, Xiaojiao looked like a deeply hurt and resentful woman. As for Meng Wei, there is a little more calmness among the weird spirits. Especially after experiencing life and death, the Taoist heart has become extremely firm. But why does Xiaojiao look exactly like Meng Wei? Coincide? Zuyun felt that was not the case and looked into Xiaojiao's eyes. At first, he was frightened, so he didn't pay too much attention. But Xiaojiao said that her eyes were destroyed by the immortal emperor himself, so she took another look. No different from ordinary people. Zuyun didn't think much about it, because Tang Liwen was the same way at the beginning. If she hadn't mentioned it herself, he wouldn't have known that Tang Liwen was blind. Even at this moment, Xiaojiao's eyes revealed true feelings, sadness and reluctance. Zuyun did not dare to look anymore, fearing that he would sink into it if he looked again, so he lowered his head slightly and said, "Xiaojiao Fairy, I am not your majesty is already dead." "I don't know." As he said that, Zuyun thought of Fen Tianyan in his arm. "Do you recognize him?" Fen Tianyan is also the immortal emperor's heavenly fire, and maybe they know each other. So, Zuyun shook his arm and summoned Fen Tianyan with a thought. "This is Fenchen." The fire was overflowing. Although Xiaojiao couldn't see it, she still felt a familiar aura. After letting out a cry, she immediately said, "You still say that you are not His Majesty? Fen Tian was obtained from Qingping Star by you with all your efforts. Come and be carefully cared for and cultivated." After Xiaojiao finished speaking, Fenchen also turned into a human figure. He stared at Xiaojiao's figure for a long time, and then said with some uncertainty, "Nu Jiao. Fen Tian, it's me. After so many years, you still remember me." Xiaojiao considers herself to be the immortal emperor's slave, so Fen Tianyan used to call her that. However, time has passed and Fen Tianyan himself almost died. Remembering Nu Jiao, he is also racking his brains. "I remember, but not much." Fen Tianyan shook his head, then turned to look at Zuyun and said, "Master, I only remember that she seems to be the immortal emperor's personal maid, but I can't remember anything else." Zuyun nodded, confirming Nu Jiao's identity, and said to Fenchen, "Tell him, I am not the immortal emperor." Fen Tianyan just couldn't remember too much, and his intelligence was almost the same as that of ordinary people. He naturally understood Zuyun's words and said, "Nu Jiao, the immortal emperor is dead. You can't see with your eyes. You can't rely on your nose. If you can see the master's appearance, you can naturally tell where you came from." Fen Tianyan's words were a bit ruthless. But in fact, he felt a little impatient from Zuyun. For the sake of getting to know each other, Fen Tianyan was willing to help her. Of course, the premise is that Zuyun has no murderous intention. After following Zuyun for a long time, he knew Zuyun's temper. "Go back, where can I go back? Ever since the change in the immortal mansion, I have been trapped in this bedroom. If I hadn't smelled His Majesty's breath, I wouldn't have woken up." Xiaojiao immediately collapsed on the ground and started sobbing. The clear tears that flowed down between the fingers fell to the ground and turned into red blood tears. Zuyun frowned, looked at Fen Tianyan, and said, "Can you remember why this is?" Fen Tianyan shook his head. Zuyun added, "She said that her eyes were destroyed by the immortal emperor, which seems to mean, her eyes are magical." Fen Tianyan also frowned, as if he was recalling something. Seeing this, Zuyun couldn't help but feel hopeful. But after a few breaths passed, Fen Tianyan suddenly hugged his head and started to cry in pain. At the same time, his figure collapsed and turned back into a flame. The fire was getting smaller and might even go out at any time. Zuyun was shocked and quickly took Fen Tianyan back into his arm. With the warmth and nourishment of the chaos power, Fen Tianyan stabilized. But Zuyun broke out in a cold sweat. If Fen Tianyan was gone, it would be too late for him to regret it. He also didn't expect that he was just giving Fen Tianyan a reminder to remind him of something, but in the end he almost caused Fen Tianyan's death. This. Why? Zuyun looked at Nujiao again with an incomprehensible expression. He clearly knew that she was not Mengwei, and she was wearing a veil under her eyes. But what was imprinted in his mind, Zuyun could not help but imagine it as Mengwei. Is the immortal emperor really dead? Just when Zuyun was lost in thought, Nujiao seemed to have finished crying. Her body was covered with blood and tears, which was shocking. People who don't know may think that a killing took place here. Dead, Zuyun took a deep breath and said, I accidentally got a part of the Diwu glazed mirror, so I became the master of the immortal mansion. This is true whether it is burning sky flame, Huang Longshu and other immortal medicines. Call me. Huang Longshu also recognizes you as his master. Nujiao finally spoke out in surprise. Yes, he recognized me as Lord, and Zuyun thought for a moment and said, he can also transform. Not only him, but also Rainbow Leaf, Purple Yuanko, etc., can do it. Transformation, the elixir transforms into shape, it's a pity that your majesty can't see you. Nujiao wiped away her tears, which made Zuyun couldn't help but look at her. But the amazing thing is that apart from the water-stained tears on her hands, they didn't turn into blood like drops on the ground. Strangeness. Zuyun muttered in his heart. After Nujiao wiped away her tears, she continued, since you are the master of the immortal mansion, can you take me to see Huang Longshu? I am an old acquaintance with him, and I want to ask him some questions. Hearing this request, Zuyun couldn't help but smile bitterly. I am the master of the immortal mansion, but this place does not belong to me. I am also looking for a way to get out, in other words, the Dao glazed mirror where this bedroom is located, the fragments were refined by others, so I am trapped here. Zuyun felt that his explanation was difficult to explain. But fortunately, Nujiao understood. Your name is Dao glazed mirror, so considering that the universe glazed mirror is indeed broken, it's no wonder His Majesty will die. However, if you want to leave directly, it's not difficult. Because Xiaojiao has the final say in His Majesty's bedroom. Speaking of this, Nujiao's eyes narrowed into crescent moons, just like Mengwei's proud look. The tone also changed, as if she accepted the fact that the immortal emperor was dead. Zuyun breathed a sigh of relief and said, if you can send me away directly, then I won't be in a hurry. I think the person who trapped me here will definitely come in again. When the time comes, you have to help me. Otherwise, I'm not sure I can lead you to find the Huang Longshu. That's natural, Nujiao chuckled, but what should I call you? Like Fenchen, do I call you master? Zuyun touched his nose, but he couldn't help but have a picture in his mind. Mengwei calls me master. This is unbelievable. You should call me by my name is Zhu. Before the word Yun came out from the back, outside the window, a large amount of chaotic power gathered at some point, and suddenly poured into the house. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 944. Not good. Zuyun's expression changed drastically, and he quickly sat down cross-legged, frantically rotating the lotus pods in his body, condensing his own chaos power, and forming a protective shield outside his body. At the same time, he did not forget to remind Nujiao, hide quickly. Previously, he had been dealing with the power of chaos and had never seen Nujiao. He thought that the place where Nujiao was unconscious and sleeping would be able to protect her. It's just the power of chaos in the void, why is there such a fuss? Nujiao found it interesting because she had been hiding in the wooden bed. It was only when Zuyun sat on the desk chair that she felt something and woke up. In the past, whenever the immortal emperor sat here, she would make fragrant tea and bring it to him. So Nujiao never saw Zuyun's embarrassed appearance. Nujiao, as I said before, I am unable to deal with these chaotic forces. Zuyun shouted in a low voice, not to mention protecting you. Nujiao walked towards the window on one side and said strangely, since these chaotic forces come in from the window, wouldn't it be better if you close the window? After that, she had already closed the window. In an instant, Zuyun felt the pressure lighten. Nujiao's steps were light and fast. Although she could not see clearly, she was obviously very familiar with this bedroom. However, within a few seconds, all the wooden windows in all directions were closed. Separated from the void. No more chaotic forces can come in. Zuyun was speechless. Why didn't I think of that? He is really a fan of the authorities. Fortunately, I was not injured, otherwise there would be no place to cry. Since the immortal mansion can always be in the void, it goes without saying how strong it is. If you close the window, you can isolate it from the void. Touching his nose, Zuyun couldn't help but blush a little, and said to Nujiao, my surname is Zhu Minjian, you can just call me Zuyun. Unexpectedly, Nujiao shook her head and said, although you are not the immortal emperor, you are also the new master of the immortal mansion. It is very inappropriate for me to call you by your first name. But when I call you master, Xiaojiao can't say it either. The master in Xiaojiao's heart is only the immortal emperor. How about I call you young master? Okay. Zuyun rolled his eyelids, it didn't matter what he shouted. The important thing is that before he knows Nujiao's identity, even if he fuses the fragments, he will never let Xiaojiao leave the bedroom. In addition to what she had just promised, meeting Huang Longshu. Master, Nujiao called seriously, then took off her veil. As if sensing the strangeness in Zuyun's heart, she said, Your Majesty has made a rule before, Xiaojiao is not allowed to show her face. If your Majesty has already if the immortal goes away, then this rule will no longer exist. Everyone has a love for beauty. Men like women to be beautiful. Women prefer to show off their beauty. There is no need to say more about Xiaojiao's appearance. But Zuyun always felt a little uncomfortable in his heart when he looked at it, so he waved his hand and said, then I will also set a rule. Don't show your face when you face me in the future. Nujiao's action of removing the veil suddenly froze. Fanyang Realm, the extreme south coast. Two figures stood quietly under the cliff. In front of them, or rather under them, was a huge coastal pool. The pool is connected to the sea, so it is filled with sea water. However, as the sea water stirred in with the waves outside, it turned out to be faintly glowing with green light. It is simply a real tide in the blue sea. Senior, this is the Poison Dragon Pond. Lu Ruyang whispered, as if he was afraid that his voice would be loud and alert the demon dragon below. Well, the incarnation responded softly, just stay here and don't move around. Now that you have no spiritual power to protect yourself, I can only protect you temporarily. However, if you move, you will destroy the spiritual talisman. I am at the bottom of the poisonous dragon pond, and I am afraid that even if I want to protect you, it will be too late. Yes, the little one is motionless. Lu Ruyang responded quickly and then sat cross-legged on the cliff. I saw him transform into the void and draw the talisman, and soon the first talisman was drawn. Breath-holding talisman. The talisman pattern dissipated, but the spiritual power in the talisman surged towards Lu Ruyang's eyebrows. Before all the spiritual power could be absorbed, Lu Ruyang drew another spiritual talisman. Invisibility charm. It wasn't until Lu Ruyang's aura and body shape completely disappeared that the incarnation jumped into the deep pool on the seaside. Water Spirit Pearl. With a thought, the water spirit beads formed a protective shield around him. After falling into the water, they quickly sank towards the bottom of the pool. As it goes deeper, The incarnation also finds that the sea water is getting greener and greener. What's even more mysterious is that this pool belongs to the Fanyang realm and is green, but the half that belongs to the demonic sea realm is no different from ordinary sea water. If there is a formation, it should be using the method of yin and yang. These demonic dragons know how to find a place. No wonder, this place is a dangerous place for monks in the mortal yang realm. Who could have imagined that there would be such a scene under the sea, let alone you may have thought that you would have to break the formation after entering the sea. The incarnation can't help but also sigh for all. The formations are all in line with the principles of heaven. The yin-yang formation, the three talents formation, the four-symbol formation, etc., and even Zuyun's self-destruction formation, correspond to the principle of the five elements: mutual generation and mutual restraint. Tang Liwen realized that the stars are changing as they observe the celestial phenomena. The 9-turn 9 yang formation was created by Yesuanhui using the ultimate number of 9. The incarnation also has Zuyun's formation method, so he can naturally get a rough idea. If not necessary, he can still stop and break the formation. Generally speaking, even if the offshore area is very deep, it will not exceed 10 feet. But the incarnation used the water spirit pearl to help him and quickly escaped, only to find that he had not reached the bottom in less than half an hour. After thinking about it carefully, he stopped and whispered, "It seems that this yin-yang formation still has mysteries. Only by breaking it can we dive to the deepest place." He raised his head suddenly and saw rippling water above his head. He could even see a sun, which was also swaying with the water waves. Interesting. The corner of the incarnation's mouth curved. Unexpectedly, he had been lurking for so long, but he didn't notice that he had been led by this formation. It seems that we can't dive down without breaking the formation, but that's fine. Zuyun will have no idea when the time comes. I hid the day-glazed mirror here. The more difficult the formation was, the more relieved he felt. Anyway, even if he doesn't defeat Zuyun in the end, he can still use this thread to gain a chance of survival. The abacus made by the incarnation can be said to be down to the smallest detail. But he never imagined that Zuyun would not only be able to escape at any time, but could even take the fragments he obtained as his own. However, he doesn't want to come out now. Instead, he wants to wait for his avatar to go in and then give him a surprise. After informing Nujiao about the situation he was about to face, Zuyun also told her his plan. Nujiao was very interested in Zuyun's incarnation, and also asked why his incarnation was out of control. Zuyun said helplessly, "I don't know why, but it seems that after I practiced the 5 elements incarnation technique, my incarnation seemed to be getting out of control little by little." He remembered that he originally wanted to test the avatars one by one, but somehow, the 5 avatars suddenly merged into one. Then, from communicating with the soul, to one needing to take the initiative to contact the avatar's soul, and finally, if one wants to contact the avatar, he has to get the avatar to agree. It's scary to think about it. Do I believe too much in the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra? What did you say? Your incarnation technique is called 5 elements incarnation technique. Unexpectedly, Nujiao suddenly said in surprise. Yeah, what's wrong? Zuyun raised his head and looked at the bed. Nujiao is not there, she has hidden inside, so that the avatar will not find her, but she can still communicate with Zuyun normally. I remember that your majesty once hated a person so much that he found Fentianyan with the actual purpose of killing that person. But who would have thought that it was his incarnation that was killed? And that incarnation technique is the 5 elements transformation. What? Zuyun stood up in shock. I can't remember his name. He seems to be called 5 elements or something. His strength reaches the level of immortal lord. However, after his incarnation was burned by Fenshin, his immortal soul was also greatly damaged, and he fled to no one knows where. However, that incarnation had no intention of living, and it also caused heavy damage to His Majesty. At that time, Your Majesty was always served by me, so I only knew what was happening in the fairy world. Hearing this, Zuyun was extremely shocked. Originally, he couldn't even imagine the death of the immortal emperor. But who knew that it was actually related to the immortal who practiced the 5 elements incarnation technique? So, is that the immortal who created the 5 elements of Chaos Sutra technique? I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 945. Zuyun was very suspicious, but Nujiao couldn't remember the person's name, but the immortal number had the 2 characters and in it, so it seemed to be the same. Then listen to what Yayuan said again: people from the 5 elements sect are very likely to die after ascending. Is it also related to this immortal? Although it is confusing to connect all the problems, they all point to that person in the end. Fortunately, the 5 elements Chaos Sutra I practiced has changed. Otherwise, the final fate will be the same as these 5 elements sect monks. I have to say that the creator of this technique played a big game. Zuyun said secretly in his heart, and then asked some questions about Nujiao's life experience, only to find out that she turned out to be a demon fairy. The immortal who proves the Tao through magic. Nujiao was born with a demonic body, and all her cultivation was reflected in her eyes. Even the immortal emperor might not be able to control it, so he destroyed Nujiao's eyes, and then he was relieved to let her become a personal maid and stay here all the time. In the bedroom, Nujiao knew that something had happened to the cosmic glazed mirror, but she didn't know that it was torn apart into countless pieces. She couldn't go out to see it, because the bedroom had a formation specifically targeted at her. Moreover, the power that created the fragments of the cosmic glass mirror also affected her, causing her to fall into a coma and sleep. Everything happened in the fairy world, and Zuyun had no way to connect any of the things with Menguia. Is it really a coincidence? If it's just a physical resemblance, that's it? The world is so big and the world of immortality is so big, it's normal for coincidences to happen. However, Nujiao and Menguia have completely different temperaments, but they give Zuyun the feeling that they are clearly the same person. Could it be that Nujiao and Menguia were just like themselves and their incarnations, originally the same body but later split into 2 for some reason? Zuyun was in a daze, feeling like a flash of light flashed through his mind, but he couldn't catch it. After a long time, he finally gave up. Master, do you have any more questions? Nujiao's voice came from the other side of the bed. No, let's just wait here with peace of mind. When I come in, you will take back control of this house so that he can no longer come in and out at will. Then I can deal with him without any distractions. Zuyun also told Nujiao about the incarnation, which actually reminded her whether she had another incarnation that fell into the mortal world. Okay, now that I've woken up, I have the final say in this bedroom. Nujiao said confidently, no longer as fragile as before, which actually made Zuyun feel a lot more relaxed. He is not afraid of heaven or earth, but he is afraid of women crying in front of him. Perhaps this is his weakness. For ordinary monks, this is extremely unbelievable, but it would not make people think of threatening Zuyun with this. At this time, in the poison dragon pond, the incarnation was immersed in the mind, no longer using the water spirit beads to dive, but focused on breaking the formation. Yin and Yang Tao is the first formation Tao that Zuyun learned when he studied formations with Yesuanhua. In all things in the world, the positive pole must be reversed, and the reverse pole must be righteous. This is Yin and Yang. The 5 elements are interdependent and mutually reinforcing, and so is Yin and Yang. So relatively speaking, using Yin and Yang as the formation is relatively simple. The incarnation knows the secrets well. Once he decides to break the formation, the yin-yang poison dragon formation will no longer be able to trap him. After a while, the incarnation found a way to break it open. He silently formed the formation in the water and muttered words at the same time. Soon, with him as the center, the undercurrent in the water began to surge, and the sea water and venom slowly intertwined and mixed together, and then were slowly washed away by new sea water, and finally disappeared. The formation is broken. The incarnation was overjoyed, and he looked down at his feet. Sure enough, it was no longer as deep as before. However, when you look at the bottom of the sea, you can still find a huge bottomless crack. I think those poisonous dragons are hiding here. With a flash of light in his eyes, he transformed into a left hand wrapped around Xiaohe, and his right hand held the dragon-beating whip. Entering Longtan alone, this is what he relies on. Gathering his mind again, the incarnation moved the water spirit bead, and his body was like a stone falling to the bottom of the sea, rushing towards the crack quickly and straightly. In just a few breaths, he had already slipped into the crack. There was an undercurrent here and there was no life at all. It was obvious that all the creatures in the nearby sea area did not dare to come here. Soon, under the influence of the water spirit beads, the incarnation fell to the bottom of the crack. There was a cave here. Although it was surrounded by sea water, when his feet stepped on the bottom of the crack, he felt like he was in another world. The feeling of one side of the world. These poisonous dragons will find a place. Above is the yin-yang formation, but below is the square formation. This Biffin realm is quite magical. Poison dragons are also considered demonic dragons, so naturally they don't know how to arrange formations, so they found this by themselves. Looking up from the bottom of the sea, it looks like a sliver of sky in the water. It's just that there is no light and there is no sky. But this will not affect the incarnation's actions. With the water spirit bead in his body, he can feel the surrounding situation through the undercurrent in the water, not to mention, he still has his soul. Even if it is only half of the normal incarnation stage, it is still much better than the nascent soul stage. The square array can't trap me either. With a look of disdain on his face, the incarnation began to break the formation again, and the effect on him was nothing more than spending more time. After the formation broke, the scene in front of him changed again. It was no longer a crack, but a flat seabed. Not far away from the incarnation, there is a palace in the sea. At the entrance of the palace, there were two demon cultivators with green light on their bodies. Although they were in human form, their faces still had some characteristics of demon dragons. With two horns on their heads, green faces and fangs, they looked more like demon beasts that had not yet fully transformed. Some human beings actually found this place. As if they felt that the incarnation was looking at them, the two guards couldn't help but show a fierce light in their eyes, with ill intentions. There are also people in the human race who understand formations. The Demon King said that although this formation is a natural formation, it is not very clever. It is nothing more than a formation within a formation, and a formation under a formation. Since a formation master has come, we must kill him. After saying that, the demon cultivator turned around and turned into a green demon dragon, covered with green scales and faintly revealing black hair. A mere demon dragon is worthy of fighting with me. The incarnation sneered disdainfully, and then raised his left hand. Xiaohe, swallow him. Even if Xiaohe was unwilling in his heart, he had to transform into his original body. These poisonous dragons are actually just poisonous dragons. The real dragon blood in their bodies is extremely rare. They just have the shape of dragons and live in the formation for a long time. Therefore, there are many rumors outside, so they are called dragons. Moreover, the realm of the guard at the door is naturally not high, and they are no match for Xiaohe at all. After Xiaohe left his hand, his body grew rapidly. The pure real dragon blood, so he did not need to release the dragon power, and formed a blood suppression. Immediately, the demon dragon that turned into its original body could not move, and could only watch the bloody mouth swallow him directly. Then, there was no consciousness. Suddenly, the companion became the food in the other's mouth without any resistance, which frightened the other guard so much that he couldn't help himself, his legs and thighs trembled, and he knelt directly at the door. "Senior, spare my life, spare my life." The incarnation snorted coldly, "Who dares to stop me in this northern mortal realm? Xiao, swallow him too." Without waiting for the demon cultivator to make any move, Xiao flashed past like black lightning in the water. The bottom sand was lifted up, and the demon cultivator was swallowed by Xiao. "Ha ha ha, well done. Then let's go and pay a visit to this so-called poisonous dragon demon king." The incarnation laughed wildly, took a step forward, raised his foot and kicked the palace door open. Boom! He did not restrain himself at all, and this kick even regarded the palace door as a big enemy. With one kick, the palace door exploded. The whole palace was also shaken. This alarmed the entire poisonous dragon palace, and countless poisonous dragons in the Demon King realm transformed into their original bodies and rushed towards the palace door, surrounding the incarnation and Xiao. The incarnation did not speak, but just watched coldly. Until, a gloomy man wearing a jade crown and with a green face squeezed in from behind a group of poisonous dragons. "Human race, my poisonous dragon clan has no grudges against you. Not only did you break into my poisonous dragon palace, but you also killed my poisonous dragon juniors. What do you want to do?" The man who came was the poisonous dragon demon king. His strength was naturally at the demon king level, comparable to the peak of the late nascent soul stage of the human race. "Ha ha ha," the incarnation laughed, and then raised his right hand, and swung the dragon whip in his hand fiercely. "Since there is no grudge, how about making a grudge today?" Arrogant and domineering. The incarnation at this time was arrogant and unreasonable, and wanted to bully others. You are listening to Novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 946. If Zuyun were here, he would definitely find out the reason why the other party wanted to get out of control from the incarnation's attitude. Arrogance. One of the 7 original sins. If he hadn't separated the incarnation, he could control these negative emotions. But if the incarnation left him, it would become more and more inflated and powerful. This is also the reason why Xiaohe felt that the incarnation was different, but he was powerless and could only temporarily succumb to the incarnation's power. Human race, if I meet you on land, maybe I will retreat, but you dare to be so arrogant in front of this poisonous dragon palace, don't blame me for being rude. The eyes of the poisonous dragon demon king became even colder, and even spit out a green bubble every time he said a word. Green is his poison mist. As the bubbles burst, the poison mist also spread instantly and wrapped around the incarnation. Heh, a trifle. The incarnation had his own plans and ideas. If he wanted the poisonous dragons to feel at ease and help him look after the Dao glass mirror, he needed to conquer them in all aspects. So when he came, he made such a big noise, with the purpose of attracting all the poisonous dragons. The poisonous fog was diffused by the sea water, but the incarnation had the water spirit pearl, and he could use the water spirit pearl to control the undercurrent in the water. He just moved his mind, and the poisonous fog not only stopped, but also attacked the poisonous dragons. The poisonous fog of the Demon King was undoubtedly the strongest among the poisonous dragons. Immediately, those poisonous dragons with weaker strength could not escape and were quickly entangled by the poisonous fog. The dark green dragon bodies turned bright green. The poisoning was serious. Soon, these poisonous dragons became a little manic, which was unexpected by the poisonous dragon demon king. To capture a thief, first capture the king. Since the incarnation wants to control the entire poisonous dragon clan, in addition to establishing his prestige, he must also show his strength to make the poisonous dragon demon king surrender. Strike the confidence of the poisonous dragon clan from all aspects. The incarnation's action came in an instant, and the poisonous dragon demon king did not react at all, let alone take back the poisonous fog. Seeing the juniors going crazy, he hurriedly ordered the other demon king level poisonous dragons to go and control them, and then he tried his best to take back the poisonous fog. This round, the poisonous dragon demon king was completely defeated. He also faced the incarnation. "Human race, what do you want?" he shouted in a deep voice. But this time, he no longer dared to use poisonous fog. "No, I want you to help me guard something." The incarnation knew that his goal had been achieved, so he lazily took out the Daewoo mirror from his arms. Seeing this mirror with colorful light, the poison dragon demon king couldn't help but wonder, "You are very powerful, and you must be a master in the mortal world. Why do you need us to guard? There must be something wrong when things are abnormal," and the poison dragon demon king also understands this truth. From the ability of the incarnation to control the poisonous fog to counterattack, he can see that the incarnation is very powerful, and of course he will be extremely careful at this time. "This is just to inform you, not to ask you. If you can guard, then guard, if you can't guard, I will let you know what it means to be really rude." Being able to make a request means that the poison dragon demon king is somewhat submissive. The incarnation does not intend to persuade the poison dragon demon king, but takes out another means. "Xiaohe." After talking to the poison dragon demon king, the incarnation shouted, and Xiaohe instantly released the dragon power in his blood. Ang! The dragon roar, as if it appeared out of thin air, shocked a group of poisonous dragons. "This is a real dragon, a real dragon." The poison dragon demon king's face changed drastically. He has never seen a real dragon. But it can be determined from the invisible suppression of the bloodline. "It's good to know," the incarnation smiled slightly, stretched out his hand and raised the dragon whip, and swung it directly on Xiaohe. Ang! Xiaohe was caught off guard, he didn't know that the incarnation would attack him. But fortunately, not much spiritual power was used on the dragon whip, which made him more or less bearable. But the real effect of the dragon whip is on the dragon soul, and the pain is also quite strong. "See, I can beat real dragons, let alone you demon dragons with only thin real dragon blood." This move completely defeated the confidence of the poison dragon demon king. He lowered his head and surrendered. "We, the poison dragon clan, are willing to guard this mirror for the senior." He knelt down directly, kneeling on the ground. The other poisonous dragons in the demon king realm also turned into human forms, standing behind the poison dragon demon king one by one, and also bowed down. "Ha ha ha." The incarnation laughed wildly, and then threw the Daewoo mirror in front of the poison dragon demon king. "Keep an eye on this mirror, I may come back to get it at any time. If the mirror is here, you will be here. If the mirror is not here, you will die." After saying that, he put the dragon whip back into his waist, and let Xiaohe wrap around his arm again, and then left without looking back. The poison dragon clan could no longer resist him. And the most critical step was that he used the dragon whip to hit Xiaohe. The real dragon that made them feel suppressed from the blood, but let him whip it, he could imagine how the poison dragon clan felt at this time. After doing all this, the incarnation fled towards the sea with satisfaction. It was difficult to come, but it was extremely easy to go back. But a moment later, he had already floated out of the sea. With a leap, he appeared on the reef cliff. "Lu Ruyang, you can remove the talisman." He spoke lightly, and two array patterns flashed in front of him, and then Lu Ruyang's body appeared in front of the incarnation. "Senior, did you do it?" Lu Ruyang did not dare to look at the incarnation, and asked very devoutly. "Yes, it's done. Now I'm going back to Liu Yun sect to do business. This place is close to the Demon Sea realm." If he enters the fragments to look for Zhu Yun, the fragments will be left behind and will inevitably be discovered by other demon cultivators. With Lu Ruyang's strength, it is obviously impossible to protect him. Only in Liu Yun sect, with the help of the 9 transformations and 9 suns array, he will not be disturbed when dealing with Zhu Yun. As for alchemy, if Zhu Yun is fused, and the soul returns to its original strength, he will naturally not be able to make alchemy. But if he cannot subdue Zhu Yun, he wants to recuperate in Liu Yun sect, cultivate his soul again, and finally return to the spirit world, so he can only choose to endure temporarily. But in that case, Liu Yun section will also pay the price it deserves. Yes, senior. Hearing that he could go back, Lu Ruyang was overjoyed, because the incarnation promised him that he would give him a chance after he returned. He quickly took out the Liu Yun boat, and waited humbly for the incarnation to come up, and then he followed. At Liu Yun Pavilion, Lu Ruyang was sitting in the lobby, near the door, staring at the Chaos Sword. This was originally used by Zhu Yun to attract the incarnation. But who would have thought that he encountered it in the fragments of the Daoliuli mirror refined by the incarnation? This made it impossible for him to contact the Chaos Sword. So, the sword was stuck here. At that time, he had said that no one could pull out this sword. Not only did the people of Liu Yun sect hear it, but even the nearby cultivators heard it. One person told 10, 10 told 100. Liucan is the largest and most prosperous city in Fanyang realm. It is not an exaggeration to say that it is the center of Fanyang realm. So in the past few days, countless cultivators came here, and every one of them would try to pull out the Chaos Sword. But the result was just as Zhu Yun said, not to mention that no one could pull it out, not even one could shake it. Lu Ruyang sat here and saw it clearly. 99% of the cultivators who came to draw the sword were in the nascent soul stage. Among the remaining 10%, half were sword cultivators. The others basically came to join in the fun. For a time, almost all the cultivators in the entire Liucan had been here, which made the business of Liu Yun Pavilion much better. This was something Lu Ruyang did not expect. Except for Lu Ruyang, the entire lobby was full of people. Some of them looked solemn, some had sneers on their faces, and some were thinking hard. These people all drew their swords and then sat here. Of course, sitting in the lobby was not for nothing. They all needed to spend spirit stones, so these people were at least at the peak of the late nascent soul stage. The sword looked like an ordinary sword. But how could they not be able to pull out an ordinary sword? So, they wanted to wait and see for some time to find out the mystery of this sword. Unfortunately, for now, they have gained nothing. Until the incarnation returned to Liucan. When flying over the top, the incarnation found that there were people gathered below, and he also felt a familiar breath. After taking a closer look, he was immediately stunned. Why, the original Chaos Sword was inserted here. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 947. Senior. Seeing that the incarnation was somewhat absent-minded, Lu Ruyang asked curiously, "We are almost back to Liu Yun sect, and you don't want to think about how to deal with the sect master and the elders, but you are wandering in the void at this time. Do you know where this is?" As soon as the incarnation arrived in Liucan, he went straight to Liu Yun sect, and didn't know the situation in Liucan. "Senior, this is Liu Yun Pavilion, the most prosperous place in our Liucan, and one of the industries of our Liu Yun section. As for why it is like this, I don't know." When Zhu Yun inserted the Chaos Sword, Lu Ruyang was already unconscious, and he didn't know what happened later. Seeing this, the incarnation said, "You go back to the sect first, I'll see." After that, he drew a new talisman to change the world, changed himself into Zhu Feng's appearance, and then jumped directly from the Liu Yun boat. However, he did not fall in front of the Chaos Sword, but mixed in the crowd, and even lined up. Before taking the sword, he needed to understand the situation here first. Although the incarnation carries a trace of Zhu Yun's evil thoughts, and the evil thoughts are slowly growing, he has always been as cautious as Zhu Yun's original body. Only by paying attention to details can one live longer. Fellow deist, what happened here? The incarnation saw that a Yuanying cultivator in front of him was alone, so he asked in a low voice. Fellow deist, have you just arrived in Liucan? Otherwise, you wouldn't ask this question. The Yuanying cultivator turned around and saw that the incarnation's aura was far superior to his, so he was much more polite and told him about the Chaos Sword. The incarnation finally understood, and at the same time, he also figured out why Zhu Yun didn't use the Chaos Sword to deal with him when he was in the Fragment Immortal Mansion. It turned out that he was too conceited and wanted to use it to intimidate Liu Yun's sect. Ridiculous. While the incarnation was disdainful in his heart, he was also excited. Since he could feel the Chaos Sword, it means that he can control the Chaos Sword. Then, he would pull out this Chaos Sword and use it for himself. Then after returning to Liu Yun's sect, he entered the fragment space again and seriously injured Zhu Yun. Even if Zhu Yun knew the mysterious Azure Dragon Fist, how could he be a match for this immortal sword? For a moment, the incarnation was extremely excited, and he suppressed his excitement and followed the team slowly forward. Finally, 2 hours later, it was almost dusk, and it was the incarnation's turn. He stepped forward and held the Chaos Sword with both hands. A familiar feeling passed into his body and finally poured into the purple mansion. Yes, this Chaos Sword can't distinguish between me and the original body, that's great. In order to avoid arousing other people's suspicion, the incarnation hid Xiaohei in his sleeves while queuing. While the incarnation didn't notice him, Xiaohei had other ideas in his mind. Escape. Escape from the incarnation and then find the original owner. However, he wanted to find the Dao glass mirror before that. It is said that once an expert takes action, you don't know whether it will work or not. This saying among mortals also applies to cultivators. Especially for the sword cultivators, the moment the incarnation grasped the hilt of the sword, a sword force on his body immediately made all the Yuanying sword cultivators concentrate. This is the result of practicing the Wuji sword technique. This is the sword technique that the immortal emperor is also learning. Get up! The incarnation shouted, and the Chaos Sword was pulled out by the incarnation beyond everyone's expectations. It was also at this time that Xiaohei quietly emerged from his sleeves and swam to the ground along the corner of his clothes. His shrunken figure was like a small black snake. When he swam close to the ground and outside the crowd, he turned into a human form and squeezed towards the crowd like a cultivator who just came to watch the excitement. He did not take the opportunity to escape. When everyone was concentrating on the Chaos Sword and the incarnation, if he escaped, he would be discovered immediately. Instead, staying here would not easily attract other people's attention. At the same time, after the incarnation pulled out the sword, there was an uproar in the hall. Invisibly, it also helped Xiaohei create conditions for escape, so that everyone would not notice that there was suddenly more here. If the incarnation had drawn the sword with a loud noise, they would have accepted it. But the sword fell into the hands of the incarnation without any sound. Lu Ruyan was even more surprised. Zhu Yun had told him that no one could draw the sword, and she suspected that Zhu Yun came from the spirit world, otherwise, he would have asked her whether she wanted to go to the spirit world knowingly after knowing that she wanted to find Ye Yuan. In other words, the sword that the cultivator from the spirit world had inserted was pulled out by a strange Yuanying cultivator? In addition to being shocked, Lu Ruyan was even more worried. Would Zhu Yun blame him when he found out that the sword was gone? Daiyu, I will offer 10,000 spirit stones to buy this ordinary iron. At this time, a sword cultivator with extremely fast reaction rushed out of the hall with sword steps, and spoke eagerly in front of the incarnation. 10,000 spirit stones. Are you sending beggars? I'll give you 20,000. This may look like ordinary iron, but it's actually a good thing. Even people like us in the nascent soul stage can't feel the materials used to make it. Who are you insulting with 20,000 spirit stones? Deist friend, I'll give you 100,000. One hand gives you spirit stones, and the other hand gives you this black sword. Humph, we merchants are not afraid of anyone who has more spirit stones than us. I think this deist friend has also heard of our business. Our business is all over the Fanyang realm, and we even have business in the Demon Sea realm and the Ice Demon realm. So, deist friend, why don't you sell it to us for 500,000 spirit stones, so that we merchants can have a good relationship with you? Haha, what a generous merchant. You are just reselling these things, which is a complete insult to this sword. I am willing to give all my wealth in exchange for this sword from my fellow Taoist. An old man who seemed to be dying and could die at any time, holding a long sword glowing with black light, appeared in front of the incarnation at some point. Even the incarnation looked at it in great surprise, but he didn't even notice it. Looking carefully, this old man has no spiritual power. Could it be that he is a sword cultivator who has put all his cultivation into that sword? If this sword is not an immortal sword, it might be compatible with this old man. It's a pity that he has to decide on the Chaos Sword, which is one of the trump cards against Zuyun. Besides, no matter how amazing this swordsman's swordsmanship is it possible that it can't compare to his Wuji sword technique? The incarnation sneered, but also showed disdain, and said, I will not sell this sword to anyone. The Taoist friend who put down the sword at that time said that whoever pulls out the sword will give it to him. Now this sword is I own everything, you can get out of the way. After saying that, he squeezed out of the crowd and walked towards Lu Yunzong. Everyone was stunned and wanted to follow, but unexpectedly, a figure moved faster, like willow leaves fluttering, and had already passed them and followed the incarnation. Elder Yan. Everyone was slightly stunned. Although Lu Yun's sect had people who practiced sword techniques, they were not sword cultivators. And Lu Ruyan mainly focuses on practicing magic. Could it be that Elder Yan wanted the sword and gave it to her, right? Nonsense, her lover hasn't appeared for hundreds of years, and there are rumors that she used a hammer to make her lover. Be careful, aren't you afraid that Lu Yun's sect's people will be angry? This is the most embarrassing thing for Lu Yun's sect in the past 1,000 years. Oh, yes, Elder Yan is such a good person, but he has been waiting for that person for so long and has never seen any trace of him. Seeing that Lu Ruyan was following them, everyone lost their thoughts. They want to give you this face. Lu Ruyan's behavior in Liukan is very popular. Even more because he is the elder in charge of the channel in the spiritual world. Sooner or later, these people will have to venture into the spiritual world, and they must deal with Lu Ruyan. The other party doesn't want to sell the sword anyway, so there's no need to offend Lu Ruyan. But Lu Ruyan didn't know what these people were thinking. At this moment, her eyes were all filled with the Chaos Sword. Although she has never seen the power of the Chaos Sword, Zuyun put it here. She didn't want Zuyun's sword to disappear like this. After several days of observation, although she could not figure out what was so mysterious about this sword, at least so many monks did not pull it out, which showed that this sword was absolutely extraordinary. How could it be taken away so casually? There was no excitement in Liu Yun Pavilion, and all the monks dispersed one after another. Lu Ruyan followed the incarnation all the way. It's not that the avatar didn't know, but this Liukan was prosperous, and even though she was unhappy in every way, there was nothing he could do to her for a while. And since he was using Zhu Feng's appearance at this time, he couldn't return to Lu Yun's sect. Of course, he still doesn't know Lu Ruyan's identity. After thinking for a moment, the incarnation turned and walked towards the outside of the city. He wanted to know if Lu Ruyan followed her and saw that the sword was extraordinary. If that's the case, then we can only kill Lu Ruyan. The incarnation has scruples, and so does Lu Ruyan. She really wanted to get the sword back, no matter what method she used. However, most people in the city recognized her, and it would be extremely inappropriate for her to bully others. But when he saw the incarnation turning around and heading outside the city, his eyes lit up. And half an hour later, the two of them were 1 mile apart, in a forest outside Liukan. This forest is full of willow trees with dense weeping branches and full of greenery. This fairy followed you all the way and you don't know why. The incarnation stopped, turned around, and then noticed Lu Ruyan's stunning appearance, which actually had a different temperament in this weeping willow forest. Suddenly, the incarnation became lustful. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 948. Lust, one of the 7 deadly sins. When the evil thoughts of the incarnation begin to expand, lust also arises. He didn't know Lu Ruyan, let alone Lu Ruyan's identity. Otherwise, even if there is lust, the incarnation will suppress it. It's a pity that he doesn't know how at this time. He even guessed that Lu Ruyan came for the Chaos Sword, so he could use the sword to control it. The Avatar doesn't want to cause any casualties for the time being, because this place is not too far away from Liukan, and the opponent is still at the nascent soul stage, so it is impossible for him to kill him silently. If the other party makes any noise, it will definitely arouse Liukan's alert. The incarnation just had a plan in his mind. Doesn't the other party want a sword? Then give her the sword. As a transaction. After the female cultivator left, he used the connection between his soul and the Chaos Sword to make it fly back silently. Ordinary storage bags and storage rings cannot trap the Chaos Sword. Fellow Taoist, this sword belongs to my friend. Can you return this sword? I am willing to pay a certain price. Seeing that the aura on the Avatar was stronger than her own, Lu Ruyan was also a little wary. Apart from anything else, even though he had completely suppressed his aura and was still in the willow forest, he was uniquely blessed, yet he was still discovered. Ha ha ha, the fairy wants a sword. The Avatar laughed loudly and said, it's not impossible, it's just what price can the fairy pay to come out? Fellow Taoist, please don't tell secrets. I heard someone offered 500,000 spiritual stones, or even all their wealth, but you were not tempted. So, I don't know what I can offer to give way. Friend gives me this sword. The implication is to let the Avatar set the price. But how did she know that this was exactly what the incarnation wanted? Fairy, this is what you said. Let's not talk about spiritual stones for now. Do you think I am missing a spiritual stone? The incarnation spread its hands, but it was obvious that there was no spirit stone on its body. There is no shortage, otherwise fellow Taoist will definitely sell this sword at the gate of Liu Yun Pavilion. Lu Ruyan said seriously. Indeed, not only swords, but also ordinary magic weapons, I don't pay attention to. This sword, how to put it, although I can use the sword, but I am not here for the sword. In fact, I am a weapon refiner master. This sword looks like ordinary iron, but I can't recognize what material it is made of. So in my eyes, this sword is a priceless treasure. If you want me to give this sword away, you have to give it to me. Something that matches comes out. The Avatar didn't want to use force, so he could only slowly bring Lu Ruyan to his words. Fellow Taoist, do you want materials for refining weapons? Lu Ruyan was not interested at all in whether the Avatar was a weapon refiner, but as long as there was a possibility of getting the sword back, she would naturally be willing to do it. Not necessarily, the incarnation chuckled, throwing the sword to Lu Ruyan as if casually, and then said, the materials are always there, but it may be difficult to meet a beauty again. Lu Ruyan, who had just tightened her grip on the sword and was still wondering why the other party gave her the sword so casually, when she heard these words, immediately took a few steps back and asked in shock, fellow Taoist, This is not a joke. Whether you can open it or not, isn't it just a matter of a word from the fairy? The incarnation took the opportunity to step forward and put a certain amount of pressure on Lu Ruyan in terms of momentum. In his opinion, this was just Lu Ruyan's reserve. Or maybe she was worried that there would be people passing by in the wild, which would cause her to lose face. Come to think of it, such a beautiful female cultivator is in the nascent soul realm. Some cultivators seem to have greeted her before, so she must know a lot of people. The more this happens, the more he cares about face, and the more he desires the incarnation of lust. Lu Ruyan's expression suddenly turned cold. She couldn't give it to her. This was what she had been leaving to Ye Yuan for nearly 1,000 years. The Chaos Sword is also impossible to give. Because this is Zhu Yun's Chaos Sword. If it is lost, Zhu Yun may not take her to the spirit world. Although Lu Ruyan is in charge of the spiritual world channel, it does not mean that she can completely pass through the spiritual world channel. Unless there is a guide. Fairy, you are not being honest, the incarnation said aggressively. You let me open it, and I opened it. You asked for the sword, and I gave it to you. I am sincere, so I gave you the sword first. But it's your turn to give up. Why do you think you're easy to bully? Or maybe the fairy thinks she knows a lot of people and is close to Liucan, so she can call her friends to come and support her. Although it is close to Liucan, the reason why the incarnation stopped here actually has its own ideas. Even if Lu Ruyan called someone, there was no way they would arrive before he could respond. But obviously, although the other party was angry, he did not get angry, which is enough to show that Lu Ruyan did not want to make the matter a big deal. And in this way, the incarnation can slowly use words to force Lu Ruyan to accept the fact. Unfortunately, he guessed wrongly why Lu Ruyan wanted the sword. Fellow Taoist, stop talking. If you are fond of women, I can arrange some promiscuous nuns for you in Liu Yun Pavilion. I can also help you waive the cost of staying in a hotel. But if you want to be with me, this is absolutely impossible. Lu Ruyan stood still, shook her head and said. She was a little strange, wondering if the person in front of her knew her. But if we knew each other, how could we say such things without hearing the rumors about Ye Yuan and me? Are you deliberately irritating me? But to what purpose? Obviously I want the sword. This momentary loss of concentration was instantly captured by the avatar. As soon as he rolled his eyes, he knew that he should make some preparations. So he sighed and said, Fairy, since you don't want to, then forget it. If you like this sword, I can give it to you. However, you don't need to make excuses as friends. In this way, you can give me 1,000. The spirit stone can be used as payment for my hard work in drawing the sword, okay. Hearing the sudden change of tone of the avatar, Lu Ruyan was startled again, but now the sword was in his hand and he only needed 1,000 spirit stones. Could it be that the other person knows me and is just joking with me? But this joke is a little too much. Lu Ruyan couldn't figure out the key, but everything seemed to be beneficial to him. Simply, she put the Chaos Sword into her storage bag, then took out 1,000 spirit stones from it and gave it to the incarnation. Thank you so much, fellow Taoist. If you still want to do something pleasant, you can come to Liu Yun sect to find the little girl. The little girl will be willing to make arrangements for you in Liu Yun Pavilion. Lu Ruyan's cheeks were slightly hot, but she still made her promise politely. But he never thought that after the incarnation took the spirit stone, he would suddenly throw it away. The 9 spiritual stones flew in 9 directions at the same time. When they landed on the ground, they had already formed a formation. 9 turns and 9 suns formation. The purpose of the incarnation was to defraud the spirit stone, and then use the spirit stone to trap Lu Ruyan. The more he talked to Lu Ruyan, the more his lust became uncontrollable. How could he let Lu Ruyan leave? However, Lu Ruyan's announcement of her family status surprised the avatar. The female cultivator of Liu Yun sect is still in the nascent soul stage. Moreover, he can also help him arrange things in Liu Yun Pavilion. I will definitely ask about this woman's identity later. If possible, make things happy first, and then destroy his body and eliminate all traces of it. After temporarily trapping Lu Ruyan with the help of the 9 turns and 9 suns formation, the incarnation used the remaining 991 spirit stones to set up the star movement formation in the willow forest. In addition to not letting Lu Ruyan escape, she also didn't want to be disturbed by outsiders. And when he finished all this, the 9 turns and 9 yang formation had been forcibly broken open by Lu Ruyan. After all, it was just a simple formation formed by 9 spirit stones, and Lu Ruyan. Extraordinary strength. Her pretty face was cold, and her beautiful eyes were full of murderous intent. She looked at the incarnation coldly. A mere small formation wants to trap and kill me, Lu Ruyan? Fellow Taoist, do you think Elder Yan, who is usually easy to talk to, can't kill people? Lu Ruyan. The avatar was suddenly stunned. Because he knows the name. When Ye Yuan told Zhu Yun to help find Lu Ruyan, there was no gap between them. For a moment, the lustful person suddenly disappeared because of his relationship with Ye Yuan. Are you Lu Ruyan? The avatar asked solemnly. You don't know me. Lu Ruyan raised her eyebrows and asked. I don't know you, I just heard your name. The incarnation shook his head. When lust no longer controlled his thinking, he was not much different from Zhu Yun. They were both extraordinarily calm. I heard it, where did I hear it? Lu Ruyan laughed. Once upon a time, when her affairs with Ye Yuan were discussed after dinner, many people came to Liucan to see what she looked like. Now, this late nascent soul is said to have only been heard but not recognized. No wonder you dare to make such a request to me. Ye Yuanqi just came to propose marriage, but he was kicked out by Lu Yunzang, saying that he was a poor boy. No matter how talented he was not worthy of a woman from Lu Yunzang, let alone a direct lineage and the daughter of the sect leader. But who would have thought that the incarnation's words would be astonishing? He opened his mouth and softly uttered 2 words. Ye Yuan. You are listening to novels at Bless Up channel. Wish you happiness and luck. Please subscribe to receive new novels. How do you feel about this novel? Please like and leave a comment. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 949. Have you met Ye Yuan? Lu Ruyan's expression changed, just like what happened with Zhu Yun at that time. Not many people know Lu Ruyan's name now, and she rarely mentions it in front of others. Generally speaking, when they are mentioned in Fanyang realm, they are talking about Elder Yan and Ye Yuan. But what the incarnation meant at this time was that he had heard the word Lu Ruyan from Ye Yuan's mouth. How could this not shock him? After being shocked, Lu Ruyan immediately thought, is this person related to Zhu Yun? Otherwise, how could he pull out the sword so easily? So, is he also from the spirit world? When he thought of this, Lu Ruyan couldn't help but take a few steps back. Seeing this, the avatar smiled slightly and said, Lu Ruyan, Ye Yuan asked me to come find you, are you willing to follow me? What did you say? Lu Ruyan's expression froze, and her retreating steps stopped. Do you know where Ye Yuan is? Of course I know, the incarnation felt like lightning. He would have to return to the spirit world sooner or later, but he didn't know what Ye Yuan would think of him. If Lu Ruyan was in his hands, maybe this would be his trump card to save his life. After all, Ye Yuan's ability is too mysterious. Where is he? Lu Ruyan asked in shock, her heart already lost. Even though she was extremely determined, Ye Yuan was the soft spot in her heart. In the spirit world, the purpose of the incarnation is different from that of Zhu Yun, and naturally the worries are also different. He only wants to bring Lu Ruyan to the spirit world to protect himself. After all, he is the incarnation of Zuyun. Even if he merges with Zuyun's body, he has actually changed. Spiritual world. Lu Ruyan took a deep breath, but she didn't expect that what she suspected was true. So, you are from the spirit world. Of course, and it was Yayuan who sent me down to find you. Since I found you, I will naturally take you back. Are you coming down alone or with others? Also, why doesn't Yayuan come down in person to find me? Lu Ruyan asked two questions in succession, and the avatar answered them one by one. I came down by myself, and the reason why Yayuan didn't come down was because he told me that there were too many of his enemies in the Baymortal realm, and he was afraid of coming down. I can't go back. Lu Ruyan fell silent immediately. Indeed, not to mention the monks of Lu Yun sect who wanted to kill Yayuan, almost everyone in Yang realm who had dealt with Yayuan wanted to kill him. Yayuan is so self-aware. Looking back on the past, Yayuan caused great damage to the mortal world. Although it was not his intention, the impact it had on their cultivation could not be escaped. But this person said he was single, but what about Zuyun? Lu Ruyan, do you have any questions? The incarnation didn't know what Lu Ruyan was thinking. Seeing her thinking, he thought she didn't understand something. Lu Ruyan suddenly came back to her senses. After comparing Zuyun and Gigi, she felt that Zuyun was worthy of trust. The person in front of her not only had a lustful heart, but his behavior revealed a feeling that made her extremely uncomfortable. However, Lu Ruyan had to believe what he said about Yayuan. I was thinking, senior calls our place Biffin realm. Lu Ruyan found an excuse and decided to conceal Zuyun's incident for the time being, and temporarily put aside her relationship with Zuyun in front of the avatar. It's a pity that she didn't know that the Chaos Sword had already made the avatar almost aware of it. The reason Lu Ruyan wanted the Chaos Sword back was to return it to her friend. That's right, the Northern Mortal Realm. The Mortal Realm is divided into 4 directions and is located in the 4 directions of the spiritual world. This mortal realm is in the north of the spiritual world, so it is called the Northern Mortal Realm. The incarnation didn't expose it and said calmly. Then where is Yayuan in the spiritual world? The far north of the spiritual world, looking at the northern mortal world, maybe he is waiting for you to return. The avatar began to seduce Lu Ruyan. Maybe the main body also knew her identity, so she placed the Chaos Sword there? But this is not important. What is important is that now that the Chaos Sword is in hand, he has also helped Yayuan find Lu Ruyan, which may make Yayuan owe him a favor. Wait for me. Lu Ruyan was a little distracted again. The incarnation did not interrupt. She was very safe in this star-shifting formation. Zuyun, who was able to break the formation, was trapped in the fragments of the immortal palace by him, and he might even have died. Yes, he's waiting for you. When Lu Ruyan's eyes glowed again, the incarnation said. Lu Ruyan came back to his senses and said, I have no way to go to the spirit world. The normal way is to wait until the passage to the spirit world opens. The avatar smiled and said, I'm not in a hurry. Then can I go back to the sect first so that I can make some preparations? Lu Ruyan thought about going to Zuyun, returning the sword to him, and then asking about Yayuanzi and, if he knew the person in front of him. Okay, but you should return that sword to me. The Chaos Sword is one of the avatar's backup tools to deal with Zuyun. Lu Ruyan can release it, but she cannot take the Chaos Sword away. Lu Ruyan didn't expect that her little thoughts would be deciphered by the incarnation, and she was a little reluctant in her heart. Just when she was thinking of finding a reason to keep the sword, she found a wave of spiritual power suddenly coming from her waist. Immediately afterwards, he saw the sword coming out of her storage bag as if out of control and falling into the hands of the avatar. This. Lu Ruyan was shocked. Is this the method used by spiritual monks? Lu Ruyan, I can't give this sword to you for the time being. Maybe you will understand when you meet Yayuan. You said that this sword belongs to your friend. It's not that I don't believe it, but this sword, it was me who came to Linghui in the first place. Lost in time. In order to avoid arousing Lu Ruyan's suspicion, Jia still lied. But he never thought that Lu Ruyan also remembered the situation he and Lu Ruyang encountered in that wilderness. Looking for a rare treasure, only to find it missing. Although Lu Ruyang went, he returned disappointed in the end. Could it be this sword? Lu Ruyan couldn't ask any more questions, so she nodded and asked Zuyun to come if anything happened. Then she said, "Then please ask Senior to release me from this formation." Simple. The incarnation held the formation formula in his hand, and the star formation suddenly shone brightly. When the endless light dissipated, the formation had disappeared. All around, there is still the familiar willow forest. A strange color flashed in Lu Ruyan's eyes, and she silently made an inconspicuous little movement. Then she felt slightly blessed, and then left Lulin and flew towards Liukan. I didn't expect to find Lu Ruyan. I hope Yayuan won't embarrass me by then. He had personally experienced Yayuan's power, and he knocked away the 5 elements swordsman at that time with one hammer. Then he had a chance to escape and hide in the immortal mansion, and finally it was Zuyun who came out. After arriving in the Bifan realm, he also communicated with Zuyunshan and learned about what happened later, and he also had some understanding of Yayuan. Otherwise, how would he know that Yayuan was looking for Lu Ruyan? However, after he chose to disconnect from Zuyun, he was far less understanding of the situation than Zuyun. Now, he just wants to integrate Zuyun through various methods. If it fails, then Zuyun can only be killed. I need to get familiar with the Chaos Sword again and use some methods on it. Otherwise, if it enters the fragments, not only will the main body be safe, but I can also regain control of the Chaos Sword and fight back. The only one who will suffer is me. You must be fully prepared to deal with the main body. However, you must also control your evil thoughts. Before you merge with your true body, your evil thoughts can only ruin your good deeds. The incarnation whispered in his mouth, stretched out his hand to pinch the formation formula, and the star-shifting formation reappeared. Lu Ruyan rushed into the clan and found Lu Liangpeng. "Dad, is there someone coming to visit our sect?" Lu Liangpeng smiled and said, "Why, you also heard that an alchemist from the nascent soul stage is visiting." Nascent soul stage alchemist. Lu Ruyan was stunned for a moment, and then thought that Zuyun must have sneaked in, so he nodded and said, "I just heard about the alchemist, so I came to ask and wanted to see the alchemist." Division. Your senior brother Yang took the alchemist to the poison dragon pond. He said that the poison dragon liquid is one of the main ingredients for refining the infant training pill. He is not here now. Lu Liangpeng said, "Now that the elders have settled down and are concentrating on cultivation, no one will mention your affairs anymore. Since you are back, you should stay here and ask for some infant training pills when the time comes." Lu Ruyan didn't understand these things, and regarded the so-called elixir as Zuyun's excuse for sneaking into the sect. His purpose is just to find someone. And what a coincidence, Lu Ruyang happened to be leading the way. Then, go to Poison Dragon Pond. Lu Ruyan made a decision immediately, found an excuse at random, and left the sect. I started my cultivation by picking up the immortal skills. Author, Banzuan Xianxia. Chapter 950. Lu Ruyang did not return to the sect, but hid outside the city. He did not know that the alchemist was disguised, but he saw the incarnation disguised as the alchemist in person. He took someone out, but they didn't come back. He was afraid that he would not be able to do business after returning to Liu Yun sect alone. So after the incarnation went to look for the Chaos Sword, he turned around and left the city. But his Lu Yunzhou was given to him by Lu Liangpeng, so not long after Lu Ruyan left the city, he sensed a familiar aura. "Dad, why is Lu Yunzhou outside the city?" Could it be that senior brother Yang has returned with Zuyun? Lu Ruyan suddenly stopped and flew in the direction of the induction. Sure enough, he saw Lu Ruyang in a valley. Senior brother Yang, why don't you return to the sect? And where is the alchemist? Lu Ruyan suddenly appeared in front of Lu Ruyang, startling him. Yan, junior sister Yan, why are you here? Lu Ruyang swallowed, he was frightened. Because he has no spiritual power and is afraid of being discovered. Fortunately, it was just Lu Ruyan, he thought he could fool him. I heard from my father that you took the alchemist who visited the sect to Poison Dragon Pond, so you wanted to meet the alchemist. But why are you alone? Lu Ruyan did not become suspicious. She originally thought that the person Lu Ruyan was bringing was Zuyun. But here, except for the two of them, there is no one else. The alchemist said he was going to do something, so he asked me to wait here later. Lu Ruyang rolled his eyes, thinking that he knew Lu Ruyan's temperament. If he wanted to find someone, he would definitely not stop until he saw someone, and he thought in the Liu Yun pavilion, he allowed the man to insult him without saying a word to help him. Hatred arose in his heart, so he said again, it seems that the alchemist left something in Poison Dragon Pond and said he was going back pick. Under normal circumstances, Lu Ruyang's words were full of doubts, but Lu Ruyan thought that Zuyun had something serious to do, so he sent Lu Ruyang away. And since he didn't kill Lu Ruyang, it meant that Lu Ruyang still had someone he could use. Place. So he said, waiting here, how long can I wait? Why don't senior brother Yang take me to the Poison Dragon Pond to have a look, saying that I can't help my senior in any way? But Lu Ruyang felt happy when he saw Lu Ruyan taking the bait, but in order to make Lu Ruyan less suspicious, he deliberately made a gesture of hesitation. Then the alchemist keeps you here, maybe because he is worried that you don't have spiritual power, so you can't help? Aren't I still good? Lu Ruyan couldn't wait to find Zuyun. When he was separated from his incarnation, he used the magic technique. No one knows that the willow forest was planted by her and has spirituality. Lu Ruyan's method is to pass through Lu Lin and know that the incarnation has opened the formation again. Therefore, even if she believed the incarnation's words, she still hoped to find Zuyun as soon as possible. That's it, Lu Ruyang pretended to think, and after a moment he agreed with some embarrassment, saying, that alchemist has a weird temper, you must not rush into him. After arriving at the Poison Dragon Pond, you must listen to me. That's for sure, senior brother Yang, let's go. Lu Ruyan stepped onto the flying boat, and Lu Ruyang also followed, and said, junior sister Yan, you can control this Lu Yunzhou. The spiritual stones on it have been exhausted. If there is an accident, I will not be able to control it. Lu Ruyang already had a plan in mind. And this plan is to kill Lu Ruyan. Only by killing him can she prevent her from ruining Senior's plans and affecting Senior's good fortune for me. Lu Yunzhou emitted a ray of green light and flew towards the Poison Dragon Pond. Not far away, a black shadow followed him at a distance. It was Xiao He who escaped from the sleeve of the avatar. A man and a woman, obviously not incarnations. But why did they go to Poison Dragon Pond? Just in time, let them explore the way in front, while I followed behind. As long as they are not incarnations, I hope they won't be discovered. Xia He's eyes were shining brightly. At this time, he had transformed into a human and did not dare to reveal himself as a dragon. Although he was close to adulthood, after transforming into his true form, he was unable to completely contain the dragon power in his body. This is easy to spot. He can only do this if he takes human form. And his purpose is to break into the dragon pond alone and take out Zuyun's day-glazed mirror from the poisonous dragon pond. Outside Liukan, in the willow forest. After spending a lot of time and energy, the incarnation finally opened his eyes in surprise. It took him 2 full days to finally find a way to temporarily prevent the Chaos Sword from being taken away by its main body. He is the fusion of 5 incarnations of the 5 spiritual pearls, so he uses the 5 spiritual pearls in his body as the formation I and the body as the basis to set up a human body 5 elements formation. Through the principle of the 5 elements mutually reinforcing each other, a layer of restrictions is added to the Chaos Sword. This restriction can block the soul and break Zhu Yun's connection with the Chaos Sword. Of course, the consequence of this is that he cannot control the Chaos Sword with his soul. But it doesn't matter. As long as the sword is in his hand, he can still use it to severely damage Zhu Yun with the power of the Chaos Sword. Although Wuji sword technique can make it possible to have a sword in your hand without a sword in your heart, the immortal sword can indeed greatly increase the power of the sword technique. Now, it's almost time to deal with the main body. The avatar stood up suddenly, his eyes gleaming with semen, but before that, he put the Chaos Sword into his storage bag. Suddenly, he could no longer feel the presence of the Chaos Sword. If he wanted to use the sword, he could only take it out of the storage bag. And this storage bag was what Lu Ruyan gave him when she gave him 1,000 spirit stones. Otherwise, he would have no place to put the sword. From now on, there will only be one Zhu Yun in the world, and that is me. The incarnation took a deep breath, and then took the fragment out of his arms, and then his figure flashed, and the figure disappeared out of thin air. The fragment fell to the ground, and the incarnation also appeared in the bedroom, and saw Zhu Yun, who was unharmed at a glance. "You are, okay." The incarnation was surprised, but seeing that the windows on all 4 sides were closed, he couldn't help but sneer, "You are smart, you broke my method." Zhu Yun smiled slightly, stood up, and said with a smile, "I don't think I am smart, otherwise how could I let your incarnation escape and want to occupy the magpie's nest? But then again, since you dare to come back here again, you must have found a way to deal with me. You and I are one, indistinguishable from each other." The incarnation said expressionlessly, "But since you set foot on this immortal road, everything you have done is extremely hypocritical. That's why I want to replace you and become a brand new Zhu Yun." Hypocritical. Zhu Yun's face also turned cold, and he said, "Tell me, how am I hypocritical?" Through the incarnation's words, he already knew that this part of the incarnation's soul might have taken away the trace of the inner demon he had once had. Then, this incarnation was affected by the inner demon and thus got out of his control. So that's it? Zhu Yun immediately figured out the key, and remembered what Muling Shengshan had said to him. "Do I need to say this?" The incarnation looked at Zhu Yun with disdain, stretched out his hand and slapped Zhu Yun. "Fire curse. If you can't say it, then do it, inner demon, don't you remember the demon refining tower? Knowing everything, this fire curse can't hurt Zhu Yun at all. What does the demon refining tower have to do with me?" The incarnation didn't hit the target, but he was not in a hurry. He was just testing to paralyze Zhu Yun, so that after getting close, he could use the Wuji sword technique and severely injure Zhu Yun with the Chaos Sword. "The source of all evil in the demon refining tower has been sealed by me. You are just a small evil thought in my heart. How can you hurt me?" Zhu Yun smiled calmly, and a water column suddenly rushed out of his hand. This was the water spirit power transformed from the chaos force, which directly met the fire curse. "Fire spirit bead!" The incarnation shouted in a low voice, and the fire suddenly turned into a sea of fire, rushing towards Zhu Yun. The water waves formed by the large amount of water spirit power were like boiling water, with smoke rising and churning constantly. Taking advantage of the side blocking, the incarnation moved again, and the windows on all sides suddenly opened. Countless chaotic forces rushed in, rushing towards the two of them, and mixed into the water mist. If you don't look carefully, you can't find any clues at all. Main body, let me see how you deal with it. The incarnation took the opportunity to step into the Changshengju, and his hand was already on the storage bag on his waist. This void chaotic force was also extremely difficult for him to deal with, but if he could use it to injure Zuyun, it would not matter if he was injured. Unexpectedly, Zuyun spit out the word close, and the windows were closed at the same time. The chaotic force was blocked and could no longer hurt Zuyun, and Zuyun had been prepared for it, and the water mist also retreated completely. Blue Dragon Fist. Before the incarnation could take out the Chaos Sword, a dragon roared out from the mist.